May I remind each one of ourselves to take a moment and cultivate the highest form of motivation. We call it bodhicitta motivation or the altruistic motivation, seeking complete enlightenment for the benefit of all other sentient beings. And with that kind of motivation, we should participate in this Lamrim discourse, discourse on the stage of the path leading to enlightenment by Manjushri Lama Tsongkhapa.
Tamu nyingba le te kumbe kyo ne da da kaso jevi se po njuma chu mi ran so zonje ne wo ba le surwa la ke wo dang pa lo jiba jibe le de ba shen du do bo nyumo dang tabi nyumo je su nyumo ba nyumo dang tabi se nyumo je su se ma je ba 송제 제서 왔다 팔아 님부 되는 저 뭐냐 걸어 그 벌써 저 뭐고 대다 많이나 님뭐 그 차지기 미모 바차 님모 샤제게 시바시 님부가 저 님모 신세계 정디게 상거시 조바 뭐야나 심라 카나모다 와셔와 시제베 니가 냥버서네 그 저로 지용거 있을天边见那学校的小学校都娘的三八糟了，宁不说说呢，这就那没些不要忘把特别是用你母亲老说嘛，就别敌人了。你就他们和你进些举起，马上把就话到西巴来讲举多给就完多娘。我们做些的旁边找了手机，说到那去年节嘛，那边让给海浪边，那么能接就用到了前门，用的东西，用的东西把它别，我在这节目当特别这样啊，有些别的说那那这路呢。세기 도비 직바에 농어에 미저와 테마도 렘바 따라케 랑게 중도게 민는 뭐지 비베체 비소션 Ninja Jebe, the mother tempe, batin go de you do the Jurlagirana, Hungirana, Jebe, you do it. Take it tempe, son, Shana, Neve, Jeba, Neve, Jitin, you do Lamashes, or whatever she do here. Gobble J. Jason, the Onju Luto, Temba, the Shake, the Bachi, London, Dimni Ngombara Songje, the Temba, Yambi, Sugar, Jibber. Here's a country, Yella, Shara, Lepasha, Tembians in by inch. In the temple around you, around you, you made the shadow, Geshe, you, Shavagon, Jirsona, Livishi, Judogi, Tamshi, the Shavadran, Kelon, Domana. Pano, no, in Bivetta, the temple, the Shijimet, and Yanazapa, and Georgie, the Simbibo, on the watch, you were traced in by some Jane. Kayamijano, they are you do it. There you do it, you do it, you do it, Tamboni, Mashua, Beva, Jaya, like Shoni. Young Tamada, Navane, Sage, the Vigivi, Segazame, Bashi, Otobo, Milatuba, Lum, Gumbo, Tamboni, Ponza. 당번에 빵랑 맞지 비베 잠바 쇼로 도시와다 쇼네야 담아다 디베데바 니 잠바 냠비 세니 동게 그 왠지부에서도 지비에 책자만에 봐 유라 제바라 토고 테알렌델라 테드웨시네 좀라라레베베 오쿠르다라 담바 사모이 냠비 로미조나 Namla Lamje Gang Tangba Keva Lamje Gang Tangba Kebangui Druve Yonde Namje Zawasheva Yino Wonde Onawani Jutsordu Nyonani Chu Shumuzam Layanji Paradene Jun Tudu Munjuba Dermata Gago Jinyana Perna Tungde Lula Majung Seji Dono Telatene Ringbo Mitaba Lutan Jela Toje Varanjo Madi Jeni Boro Gueva Drenji Johnson Majung Seji Lema Dujan Tiyawa Torano Nudisin Chavar Chibi 충분히 제외 셈버를 조회 당보니 민중 거바 등 개대 순회야 테마다도 윤세고 드베시데 다 차라 텐제네 돈이 릴라샤바 대게라니 니 제다 예베선라 차바를 저시서 예제야서 하나님의 일에 저한테 템보동 시신시다 되냐나 Numa Kame Nekola Rito Be Chong de Pona Se Pona Suidik Jigwatar de Yuje de Shivatar Divigo de Dekadaya Nishimeta Numne Sumbale Shivar Shavatar Divi Shibi Jerry the Chaber de Nila Lu Jung, Nana, Tang de Mele, Paradin, Dogo de Tea, Bandu June. Chidarin da DJ, Nidam, Nimun, Yudu, Tada, Doberja, Hizo, Teo, Trojas of Menji. Yevajan de la Ye, Migawa, Jagger, Dog, Moyan de the Song, Taba de Huachim, Kyo de Shanju, Sembe, Domba. Domba sung ne di labja me dun chola ne ba ne shin de me we ne so yin do sabat ta she je je ba de yi min jung wa shi chao nyam de chen je don be pen ba ni ga mang de tang de nie ba ra je wa re re he da la me ni je ni me jang da la xian de min jung wa de da re ye xia xi yu ring sam xi so de da zao zhen ba dom de Yunja so jong we ju kang saba la be juk kang saba la be bar xiao Beva Shadi, Tambe Xie Dang Tambe Zhuo Dong Zhuo Da Ti Ju Mong Du De Bo So Ye Li La Den Ba Wu De Da Yang Xie Da Ni Gan De Da La Chen Ba So Yo Kum Ni Kum Ni Ju Re Xie Yue Jun De Yi Ni Che Ba Ri Bi Li Ni De Ba Xie Xie So De Da Nang Do Ri Yu Ne Shang Xi Su Min Jie La Bi Xie Bang La Li Ba Ri Mi Xie Bi To Ba Ni Xi Bi Bi Dong De Nang 就那当就在这把经济走到了中国中国别中什么就把开些微些把的来了，从历史中啊，我开起我，他的下午的，他俺这群众的给他中日点的个的，感觉中日点的上来，那中日现在别。 그래서 공작용다 가득 최시대 단 시당 개발고 그래서 간지 가르고 그래서 데레스 가지게 다 희는 베게 최세야 돼 시발 해고리 시대 해와 개체 그래서 시는 인데 토즈지 오시네 인수 도바탐지 삼마다시 또 시는 인데 바즈라 도바탐지 좀 모셔네 펜토요 말이스 단 가지게 단 시체나 다 텐지 기다 고셔 공작을 란 인데 토즈 마시나 इन गुम जदु जन गुमयास बेत ती निबाथों तो मारिश छेदता दी 거제 타뉴스 마마 토즈무 시게시 줄때 냠도 गुम시 쇼 마즈마 어때 고레스 그리고 탐뉴 제가락 바시 세야디 포디베디 마 누구도 세자 마저 자나 파르버 주마 저월 파자야 지고 성다데네 파 마자콘 수이자시에 네 원년가 여러 세 소설 송 미호의 소리야 사무직다 파지만이 동안나시 단다 검제도잖아 어디 소니즈 뭐 이와 퇴바지고 마지바 이 고바지고 마지바 퇴좀 비게 야마저 시고 그랬어 진짜 진짜로
Gisela read from page 202 to 205 from volume number 2 in the English translation of Lamrim Chemo, the great treatise on the states of the path enlightenment, to give us the blessing of oral lineage transmission. Now he started to give the explanation. So back to page 202. As you know that we have been discussing what is called the perfection of joyous perseverance or tsundu, enthusiastic effort. So we have discussed many things relating to that. And where we stopped last week is this, that when it comes to cultivating this joyous perseverance or doing our practice, study and practice, we have to see that we don't get trapped into one of the two extremes, if you will. So that is to say that there are some people who stress much importance about knowing and study, and so they said, you know what, really, cultivating the knowledge is very important. This is where you should focus, and so they are too much into study. But then they don't pay much attention to the practice part. So in reality, then they even don't realize what are the transgressions that they're committing, right and left, and they're just oblivious to that, So they have fallen into one extreme case. And then there are other people see, they said, what is there to know too much, and then you never practice? What's the whole point, So it's very important to practice, learn a little bit and practice it. Practice is everything. And again, they undermine the importance of study and contemplation, because the fact of this is another extreme, because if you don't study thoroughly and well, then when you do meditation, what are you really meditating on? Right? Your meditation is going to be incomplete, is going to be maybe not effective, and all of those things. So as a practitioner, we really have to kind of strike a balance between study, contemplation, and meditation. In Tibetan, what's called the, study or listen to the teaching, some contemplation or reflection, and gom, meditation. because these three things must go together, right? We must not divorce them from one another and separate as if this is more important than that and that's more important than this, and then you just get trapped into this and that, So we don't want that. So avoid the extremes and know that all of these three things must be in sync, so to speak, go together, right? So that's important for us to know. And the example given here is that of an experienced warrior. When experienced warrior go to the battle, he has two things in his mind, two-pronged strategy. Number one, as much as he wants to use all his skills to defeat and whatever the enemy, but he also has to be aware that before you really get to defeat the enemy might, slap on your face, defeat you. So you need to think about the protection, right? How can I defend myself, protect, that I don't get harmed, and then I can strike, right? So it's a two-pronged strategy. You're not going to think about defensive and not offensive, or offensive and not defensive, and you get killed, See, so just like an experienced warrior has to have a two-pronged strategy, so to speak, defensive and offensive. So we as practitioner has to really bring this whole study, contemplation, meditation together. We cannot pick and choose and then fall into one of the traps.
어디 거기서 공잡에 내가로 노동으로 될이야 탑케와실로 그랬어야지. 어디 지금이라. 근데 뉴무 충충적이나 되게 같이 말해서 NPG 농중도 안 좋아 말했어. 뉴무 충분히께서 남자 하고 하시는 까도 그랬지. 이거 충충이나 이거 년보마된 샤샤위나 이거 그게 숙셔를 줘야 인내가 전부 그랬어. 근데 류라 근데 도를 쇼에는 도도 주사될 비 남자 见 파마도 들샤샤는 인도 류용서 참네 소소비 풍그레스. 어떻게 지와 니바 충을 비 농중시교 말했어. 되리래도.
So as practitioners, say, if we are doing meditation, really we have to be mindful of how afflictive emotions or kleshya, really, even if it's a tiny, weeny bit, right, we should not say, well, this is just no big deal. It's just a little delusion cropping here. Because a little delusion, if you don't attend to it, can create, big troubles, And so when it is a little afflictive emotion arising, it's easier to stop it right there. So we must be mindful and stop it right there, rather than say, we don't give much importance, and then it can become stronger, and then it can create the more troublesome. And the example given to illustrate this point is just like if poison goes into our system, it could be a little poison, but if you don't do anything to detoxify or get the poison out of the system, then this poison can spread into the whole system and can, cause great harm. So it's like that. A little delusion can become big delusion and cause much harm.
어디 가서 제가 대화 된대시고 되지. 얘네 변 유무를 계속나 비 람산 테마다도 텐터 와셔고서 고 이제는 유름 뭐 마셔지네. 깨바다가 바까어야 다 유무 당복은 마제베데 레 당복을 시도하여 말와 깨야게므로 봐. 그래서 깨나 비 람산 뭐셔시나 거야 공부도 말고 저 깔아요. 다티 수미지를 거로 참지 애니 신의 상황고도 딱 거셔버려서는 갑자기 가요. 어떻게 되는
So in other words, that as what are called ordinary people or beginners level practitioners, it's rather very hard for us to stop any kind of afflictive emotion arising in our mind. It's just, it will happen, because there's no way to stop it forever, right, at this stage. But what we can do, and we must do, is that as soon as any afflictive emotion arises a little bit, we should be aware of that and be mindful, and then apply whatever antidote we have to stop it right there. Don't let it persist for a while. Then for a while, it can, pick up its energy and it can do damage. And because what happens is when we let an afflictive emotion persist, then all our other what are called the inappropriate mental applications, the Tibetan word sumi yije, all this like hunky-dory things, my mind, that can justify it, that can exacerbate the delusion, it can just fuel the whole thing, right? So we don't want delusion to have that opportunity to persist. So we should apply antidote and just stop it there.
어디 대단한 뉴버 타입에서 유인제비 뒤서 라는 리틀롱의 세기 도빈 지바 집에 롱을 매셔봐 테마다 렘바들 빵랑 윤도 그민은 마제 제베 손셔는 윤도 동 집에 테마다 테마된 거디 유디를 라지는 홍전은 집에 뉴 렘바다 대신 테베 손셔나 예wen지 테 뉴도랑 셰소스 어디를 셔서 가르사 애니 배는 제단 제된 다 마저 제니 집에나 인소도 라 총자로 가는데 더보고는 마쇼 된야야데 계시 모르스 hiện 쇼다가 쇼나 계지 쇼나 인 람선 베 쇼다 레모 되니면서 제시 욕을 렌터 연구를 어떻게 가려 연구를 데려다 총 양조 소라고 말하는 소도 힘 세도 어디 지와 이 숙시 보여서 되게 람산 렌터야 샤워로 와 제가 간제 다다 이 방나시대 잔데 이무뭐 연구도나 이 이무가 될 때는 이 정도게 센데도 체마게 리부두샤들 용약이 인 렌데링 예바야고 유나 니 뒤에도 람산 렌터야 샤워로 와 제가 뒤에서 렌데를 베게 이지도 메나 인 람산 렌터 말와 어디 조조 간제 컨다자 추어디 간가 기부 신경 쓰는다 동아세나기도 자와 렌데 코나라 렌다 야로와 그래서 렌데 링가만 이거를 해야지 돼도 와라이 되리다 배나 단다 람산 손 유디 션 람산 두야 되고 유칸이 시거선 뒤쪽마다는 수세게 됐음 뒤감다 뒤 랭거와 어떡하나 이다 니모데 지원데 아우다 뒤 니모데 세코와 동만 퐁리 더도 퐁리스는 이제나 이 니모 제바다 랑사가 다 샤거와 자디데 렌데 이제면나 니모 제나 고정도 녀도 도샤서 샤거와
네. So going back to the example or the metaphor given in the Lamrim, how an experienced warrior, goes to the battlefield and is very mindful of what's happening in the battlefield, and the strategies that you have prepared. And so, number one, such a warrior will do best that he's going to hold his weapon very tightly, right? You're not going to drop it, But should he drop his weapon, it's almost like his second nature. He'll pick it up the next second, because he knows that if you don't pick it up, your enemy is going to strike you with a weapon, right? So you fear of losing your life. That fear, right? Just automatically you just pick up in the second moment. So like that. We as kind of spiritual warriors, if you can say it that way, we must be very mindful of what's happening inside us. Any afflictive emotion pops up, that we must, apply, be aware of that, and apply antidote, to combat with it. And it's just like if you don't think about the antidote or our practice, it's just like dropping the weapon, and we have to pick it up right away. But thinking about the consequences of afflictive emotions, right? Because we think about afflictive emotions, they don't do anything good for us in this life and in future life. As a matter of fact, they're very detrimental, right? So we think about how afflictive emotions have really harmed us much already here so far, and they will harm us even more, right? With that sense of fear, if I don't fight with my enemy of delusion, with antidote, then it's going to defeat me. It's going to cause more harm. So with that fear, sense of fear of the consequences, we should pick up, so to speak, the weapon of antidote and counteract it. And the basic thing, as Geshe emphasized, is this all goes back to understanding and conviction in the law of karmic action and outcomes. This is what it is, really. That is very fundamental to Buddhism, whether we talk about the practices of the three types of practitioner, initial, intermediate, and advanced, or whether we talk about the Sutrayana practice or the Tantrayana practice or the esoteric this and esoteric that, whatever it is. But it all comes down to our conviction in the law of karmic action and result, right? And if we don't believe in that, then we might as well find ourselves kind of living with the delusions. So what? What's the big deal? If delusions are here, we can kind of coexist or live together kind of thing. But when we know delusions can bring a lot of negative outcomes and destruction, then we know we can't live with them. We have to do what we must to challenge them, to counteract them.
this here's temba shin the case and will raise on the onju the temba de he reverse will newa de then the dim over song ye de temba nyami shogu jiban jur he so se global ge onju to se kanji and on be said the onju da 30 you go ma da kanji yonde khande de so ina and the ganga be temba dog reason and sanji song has she the reverse will say na yonde khande reverse does do long chi me better wa what this long and karsa reverse will lam to nyawate then the dim no about dog ji des she ta yonde to khare do say ngondo dog and the thaba do the khare do na but the do ya in temba me ya ma is this one in the temba de in so subsa dim ni in temba tem bu res temba me na in the temba nyam shogun ji war ju se tin yi de ya me na in the nyam sun ya yo ma kan ji me ba sha sam to ya ji ya yo ma ro se da nyam ne kha ya yong ko ma res ke se.
So we're in the middle of page 2 or 3, where there is a stanza quoted from Arya Nagarjuna's Shrulik, or Letter to a Friend, and which highlights the importance of cultivating and maintaining mindfulness, tempa. As Geshe explained, that in a sense that cultivating mindfulness is the path, one path that everybody must travel in order to cultivate and further any kind of virtues, if you will. Even if we are seeking qualities or the status of good higher rebirth, as we say in our next life, or we are seeking liberation from samsara, whatever our spiritual goals are, without mindfulness, right, we cannot do anything. Without mindfulness, we have nothing, that can, nothing to focus on, isn't it? Our mind is never going to be able to focus on anything because we don't have mindfulness. So therefore, mindfulness is a virtue. It's almost like the one path that all must travel along the path, whatever your goals are. With mindfulness, everything is possible. Without mindfulness, nothing is possible. Here, progress,
What is Kong the temper they be you like shut up you live with show here, temper and zimba, inji tembala, round you do medo, shut up ye, shut up show gun, jiu sooner ne shevi, jundo near times it, cheva do round Kelang be dombanam ye, Bangan yimbi, Teta Chambata, Shishin Dene, Yana Dober, Georgi, Simiba Dober Jubule, Tenshi Tempazam Yene, Kaya Mishinos, or did a Hoji that Temba de Utigarisina, Tissi work. And he shut up the number says, Hoji Temba to you, the Londo Jill, the Hoji Londo Linig. Now you had shut up here, or shut that shut up again and this John those, did do good. What did they say? Bonji gone and the temper said, then today's temper corner makes a crown top you can and take Karza, Javakesh, but the shadow be tail pop here, or Tigan dash and engage race over. So that Delia temper that be remote division, the remote Tangan with a Yungura, Chasing Mambo Yungura. The Tata D comes to Teresta. Choju simbe here and Shanzung that don't be any Karsa, Lunga Miko Dang. Talk about the any Shanju something give it, and Shanju simbe nobody give it. What he meeting shorty, Papoya, Tujo Duya, or Digan Chamber Tango, this, Tarikasa, Tanadi, Shanju simbe Yamsel here or tea.
So we're still on page 2 or 3. Where it's stated that without mindfulness, we really cannot focus on any practice of virtue or path, right? But what our mindfulness should focus on, that is more to be determined by wisdom, Sherab. Because wisdom helps us to discern what is right, wrong, okay? and what we must do and what we must not do, right? When we often talk about practice, which really consists of langtor. Lang means to adopt, to cultivate, something we must do. And tor means we should get rid of, we should abandon, right? That's basically our practice. We have to get rid of something, a lot of things we shouldn't doing, and we should do a lot of things. So this is basically, so how do we know what to get rid of and what we should do, right? This is where the wisdom, Sherab, has a role to play, because wisdom discerns, right, wrong, and all those things, because mindfulness does not have that ability to see what's right or wrong. Mindfulness only helps us to focus on something. And so that's why Geshe said, in this particular context, what our mindfulness should focus on is because we are talking about Bodhisattva's way of life and practice, right? So therefore, we must focus on, at a very basic level, what are the things we must not do physically, verbally, and mentally, right? And to be more specific, we must learn about the Bodhisattva's commitments, and what are the commitments that we must focus on and keep? And what are the detrimental factors that can undermine and make us transgress our commitments that we must not do? What are the favorable conditions that we should cultivate that will help us to accentuate our commitments and practice, right? So this is where the wisdom helps us to know what is not, and then mindfulness, going with the wisdom, can help us to stay focused and be mindful of our Bodhisattva's commitments.
That karsa you the restriction and themata the loom you bisheva lamsan lenya te good of the career sana it is so solved in the way that big read laksa yale madana so the big here nyanga tiki shuk jam ningo was otinagi that in the big church of karchi no the gom jevetel in cheba sorsona in the cheba show the big midisho go the josan midisho tell then in Shimang be Yenzong da Tuzo in Jigba to some what is she do then Lindel easy to go over what is your set don't be driven Yenzong to and Jigbe means a member you like Java Togo says the Yenzong don't go say in Jigba 6,000 money bars Gangang to shooting and that gave it to Yenzong Tongue gave them to the shade hero. So sell could you tell you go that could you didn't love the catara? What is it?
So towards the bottom of page 203, what you find stated here is again, we are brought back to that original metaphor or example, how an experienced warrior remains very mindful in a battlefield, to hold the weapon tightly. Should he drop it, in the next very second he'll pick it up, because otherwise he knows he's going to lose his life, and that's no fun. That sense of fear, kicks in, and he'll pick up the weapon right away. In the same way, we as practitioners, whatever our practice is, we are doing meditation, we are doing recitation, whatever it is, but if a mindfulness kind of fades away, we have to, so to speak, bring it back, because we said without mindfulness, then I might indulge in a lot of negativities, and these negativities can precipitate my rebirth in the bad migrations, and that is a lot more suffering, right, and so on, which I don't prefer, right, and so that's why we should just pick up almost the weapon of the mindfulness and stay put and stay on our practice. And as Geshe emphasized this, we really have to mean what we say, We should not be just giving a lip service to our practice, because we could do that, right? Because we learn a lot of things, like we have tons of things to say about this. We have very skillful mouth. Well, that doesn't cut it. What it really will make the difference is what goes inside us. If we can effect a little change inside, we fear, right? Negativities can lead to more suffering. The delusions can really cause. If we really believe in that in the deep bottom of the heart, then we mean it, and then mindfulness will kick in, right? But if we don't have that belief inside, we're just very good in the skillful mouth, saying tons of things because we learn stuff, That's not going to cut it.
What is that? To go to Lindilla, say, T. D. C. John Raleigh. Ogu Titala Damba Samo Inyabe, Lo Major Namla, Lamji Kang Tamba Keba Gui, Kebangu Dubi, Yonde Namji, Zawa Cheba Inos, but that the Geshe Motu Dara. And the English and what I don't you know, Chanju said the Amjo Tongusia. That leg the one girls and near doing down to the hill, the vision, no one else of the Chayajora. But Dick had is in the dark and leaned easy maybe the charges. She that this is. Oh, she is that telebi leaned easy in you, that the Monsiak tele show somebody sango Marissa. Or to show Tawad don't do this. What is that? They didn't know that. Shung Gangan, he does anyway, get upon anything and do doing she is yes, as you are what the Ganga said, she no gas came over. Country that needs to my head, and the question did do it. You wasn't the do so Ratu Shen in the doing to get one down the pig easy case on any shin. Yeah, getting around all the Laglan to as you go one. Or teach shedding into doing she would shade, yeah, and you number the mama shade goes off. We here got Geshe. She tell you, Linde till Sabsa, she would Linde Saza Mazisha in a Tambogo Negata, Changju Senda, don't you do a shed of this some of the Linde, some of the Mazina, this is good. Yonde Juba, because Yonde Nam Zawa Sheva in Nosa. Yonde Zawa Mazat of the Zawa Mena, younger Yomara, what is too much. But I think Linde that Karsa, then the Launishim might give Chung Zo to a Songa. Give shame to Ganga, it's all a lady yellow doors. They do on the New give shum, drink the legend drink, or the Java drop the and give shame of Shagrish. Because it's all lady going to do this. It is well. But they didn't see what they do.
So we're on top of page 204. Let me read the statement here and then translate the explanation given. I quote, this in turn depends on having made karma and its effects central to their practice and then sustaining that approach. Those who fail to develop the awareness that these points are profound instructions sever the root of the good qualities ensuing from the practice that delights the learned and the sacred foundation of the path, unquote. So Geshe explains with an emphasis that we really have to attach much importance to understanding and observing the law of karmic action, its results. Perhaps we don't give it the importance that is due to this very concept. We don't consider it as a profound teaching. Karma, okay, yeah. I'm really more interested in the great compassion, the Mahakaruna, and the bodhicitta, and then the emptiness. Wow, The karma, well, that seems like so basic, so that's where our challenge lies, that we really don't develop much conviction in the law of the karma, right? And then especially when we deal with the consequences of the karma here and hereafter, how they can precipitate us into all kinds of hell. The whole presentation about the hell is not just one hell, there's 18 hell, and then I mean, like, oh my God, that's so boring and so uninteresting, and my Lord, right? We just bored to the death. Here, he didn't say that. I just put that in the footnote. So that shows us that we really don't attach much importance to this, right? So when we talk about all this, the consequences of the karma, we feel bored, we feel sleepy. When we talk about emptiness, all the ears are perked up, like, emptiness, yeah, what's that about, the compassion. So we are really missing a big deal here, because the law of karma is the very foundation upon which everything else is built, And if we don't pay attention to the law of karma, we are not going to progress in our practice, whatever we claim it to be. So we must learn to consider that teaching on karma or practicing karma, observing, is a profound instruction. It's not just a basic 101 kind of thing. And so when we talk about the consequences of the karmas in the 18 hells, and then the hungry ghosts, and then these all other things, we are not doing it to kind of erect a bogeyman here, right? To scare everybody to hell, That's not the whole purpose of like erecting a boogeyman somewhere here in our mind, and then something. This really is about the consequences of the good and the bad actions that we ourselves indulge in, and so therefore, it's really important as practitioners that we must learn about and attend to the law of karma. And as Geshe how to say, recalls from the Lumbrim somewhere, he said, stated that in one way we can talk about the three levels of practice or three types of the practitioners: initial, intermediate, and advanced, in terms of the karma, isn't it? The small scope practitioners, well, they deal with the karma in a very limited form, isn't it? And then the intermediate one, well, they expand their knowledge, so they have more things about karma. Then the advanced ones, it really knows about, so to speak, inside out, outside in kind of thing, right? So from karmic perspective, we can explain the three levels of practice. So it is central to our Dharma study and practice.
What is Garza? 오늘 이주 충무점 라양 지과대네 유인투에 줘봐 테마타네 가고바 찌냐는 스페너스 어디에 댕기면서 동대 류를 빠중세 지도는 될때네 랭고면서 류탐제라 더 예원죠 마디 제는 볼거바 다른 이주 이제 셈라 마중세 찍리 마되나 아니 디여와도네 뉴드 셈라 차버시베스 충무민족이 셈본주에서 당번이 중앙국바당 개대중 당번이 민중앙국바당 개대중내야 대마다도 유지거디 시다차된제네 돈이 릴을 잡죠 대긴 라니 이겨나 예배성의 잡아줄 해소스 어디다 거기 데려도 가서 니주디게 배게 깨마다도 다 거기 가시고 말 청주에서 대 사무동조 말이스 코탄도 청주에는 거야 예운데잖아 얘네 내가 쳐볼 류를 참니 얘네 니주 첨부해온 거리 제 니주 제가 니 손기다 마오래온 거 어디 제가 지저도 당보고는 그 니주 민중 탑시 계속 중나는 람산나서 뭐신 배가 타와지 어쩌고 그랬어 근데 기시 때문에 배군제지 말에 나 그래서 이 세미고알 카르고알 니모바 좀 내가 되면 메시아죠 말에
So we're in the middle of page 204. Actually, the point which has been raised here had already been explained earlier. So the question asked is, why must we attend to even small afflictive emotion arising or minor misbehavior? What's the big deal here? Tell me, kind of thing. So the response to that is that if we, how should say, undermine the small delusions and the minor misbehavior, they could get intensified, and so it could become a huge deal. So it's better to stop it when it's easy to stop, when they are a little bit, so to speak. So the things we should learn is, number one, preventive is the best policy, right? Do everything possible to prevent any afflictive emotion arising in our mind. Do everything possible that we are not going to indulge in any kind of misbehavior, period, right? Now that said, we might experience delusions, we might end up misbehaving, so to speak, but then we have to realize it in the moment, oh, I must stop it right now here. I must discontinue, right, my misbehavior. I must interrupt the continuity of the delusion in my mind. I should not let it happen. This is how we should do. Prevention, step number one, and combating or applying antidote, step number two. Right? This is what we should be doing. Otherwise, little delusions can pile up and they become a huge, or minor infraction or the misbehavior can pile up, right? When we don't attend to that, and then it can become a serious matter. So as Geshe recalled from his memory, what one of the great Kadamba Geshes by the name of Geshe Ben Quintian, has said. He said in a kind of very poetic form, which I don't think I can do justice in English here. But the meaning is that he said, sort of in metaphorically speaking, the Geshe Ben Quintian has only one job to do, nothing else. I always stand at the door of the cave of my mind. When he pops up, meaning delusion, I become very vigilant with the spear of antidote in my hand, right? That's what it is. So he always is mindful what goes inside his mind. When a delusion pops up, he is very vigilant and he used the antidote to calm it down. He said, that's the only job I have, I stand at the entrance or the door of the cave of my mind. When he gets tough, I get tougher with the spear of antidote in my hand,
뭐 티지 가서 오늘 저서 뉴무일 지원데 tempo 시기 시대 되냐나 뉴마kan 네걸라 레드톱에 종대대 보너스에 디 걸사 보너 수디 지바터 두유진이 대시 뎀셰바터 뎀고데스인데 까다야네 야네 중앙메타스 롱네 송벌의 시벌 샤오사 다디 파바이 까다야네 루규디 땅고니 시모시 디카두게 제샤나 데지 그런지 예버스고 있어야 되겠네 파바까다야네 애니 카르사 딜다 카르사 군통세고 말에 간 독수에서도 가니까 정보 젠타네 이 디코드 제바 젠타네 젠르자 애니 두고 예버스고 있어야 돼 애니 베 랑갈 카르다 루가르다 되는 시보 예보신 수비래서 됐으네 다 드드 사드자 예보주제 바바가다 카르다 루가디 간데 예보 쇼성을 시비래서 근데 간데 하코마서 하코마서 다 젠자스 다 젠도 정도면도 다 루마도 카르스 베그마도나데 누가서 암조 그거라 켄자 스코이 룸바지에서 그제도 제가 다 박바에는 다 제고 맞이 가르답도 마도나 얘는 넣어서 퇴거를 봤어. 그래서 좀 말했어. 에 나베 근데지 비게 가서 땡 비게 동해들 돼야도 그때 비게 예소 동해들 해다셔 디테야도 사무식시 못 당대다 인데시 테마라게 현다면서 인데 그거 말이스
맞아
인데라데 인데 저는 다다 베네 디베도고나 저는 데바 예벌에네 강사들 팀도 소지야 제 소도 밥들 유지로 왔어 어 뒤에는 인데 콜이야 이는 콜 유마스는 데려와다 띠그 마르이사리 마가지 랑에 니제제 나가다 걸로 인데 고가 키시네 인디 요델 그 레저 통게지 건냠도 당시에는 이니 가디딜 마치리스고 아니 가이디 티드잔 아니 티드야 아니 가이 칸에 들어가시데 가르자 짠 그래 나와다 통하지야 마줌스고 그 그래서 소야든 지금 그는 너무 보용 사상의 지식모도 지금 이니 현다 낙진데 테마다지 요바르와 시대 티그 아니我现在예고 예시에서 또 과다도 소 교환디 소를 봤어. 완전히 체력 때문에 사무동 거로 되게 효과여래서. 이제 예고 예시에서 다티 공부 정보통 투자 로기듯이 뭐가진 되고.
So at the bottom of page 204, there is a reference to the story of Arya Katayana. So that's why Geshe thought, well, we don't have time to tell every part of the story, but the gist of the story he wanted to tell. What this means is, the question is, if mindfulness is that important, then how can we cultivate mindfulness, right? And so the story has it. So it is said that Arya Katayana, whatever time when he lived, the local king by the name of Gyeltsen, I don't know, the Indian name, must be an Indian king, has to be. So invited him and his followers, as guests to the palace. And then he made these tremendous preparations to welcome the Arya Katayana and his entourage, so to speak. He got all the dancers and the musicians, they all of the full-blown, show there. And then Arya Katayana, was welcomed. And then when he sat down, the king asked Anandi, Your Holiness, did you enjoy the song and dances? He said, I don't know. So he thought, what happened, But then he thought maybe at one point he thought the Katayana was sitting, his eyes closed. Okay, so maybe he didn't see the dance part, right? But he said, I know, maybe you closed your eyes, but you could still hear the music, Was the music enjoyable or good for you? He said, I don't know. So then he had a doubt. He said, how could it be? I met all this dancing preparation, everything. You did not enjoy. You have, and then Arya Katayana said, you know what? Because my mind was so absorbed into thinking about all this, the consequences of negativities and the bad migrations, all of those things. So that's why I didn't hear, all the music. I didn't see the dances. So he couldn't believe it. How could it be? So Arya Katayana could see that the king didn't believe. He said, you know what, let me demonstrate my point, why it happened. He said, do you have any criminals here, He said, yes. So bring a criminal, and so ask him to carry a pot of, mustard oil, right? And then you should have a soldier with a sword, right? And let him walk with that pot in the hand and say, should he drop any oil, his head will be chopped off right there, And then you have all the music and dance going on at the same time. He said, let it be. So king arranged for that, right? A criminal was brought forward and put a, pot and told him exactly, if you drop oil, your head will be chopped off right there. And he was so mindful of his walk that he did not drop anything. Then after that, the king asked, did you enjoy the music? He said, no, I was so scared that my head will be chopped that I'm completely focused on not dropping any oil drop here. So then the king believed. He thought, oh my gosh. And then Arya Katayana said, you see, in his case, only detrimental is he drop a drop, you're going to chop his head. He just only lose this life. In my case, I'm talking about sufferings and the bad migrations, right, in the future life. That's even much more worse thing. So that's why now you can understand, when you're focused so much, absorbed like that, you don't enjoy or hear anything. So that's the story. So this is how mindful we can cultivate when we think about the consequences of karmic actions.
Oh, this is a dream. Cheba di ni da soba lelu yuwa nana tangdu mele para. Ane dwe ni mere dwe nu do go di. Te pangdu dwe yu na chedara ringdu ndangwa tar. Te ki ni da nyum na nyu du te da ndo par cha she sos. O dire da sabsa she ne ane dimna da do mabeng she ne ni do da. Ta pi kanji lisun lesu mero yung do na. Lelo de yung de na de ko yung de ni de to sa na in lan sa ni ku ya sang lo ma dan xie ni do ya sang lo do su da ge zhe ni de ali ta de ni de yu de sha o di zi ge de tong de ma la xie de pe ni de dong len xia tang mo dong re shi ba ti pe de ge de de bong di se Due no sta bangal due you in lamsan jingna jen de ko ni lo ga da yo ma lamsan be til surya sam tang ro o ti na yi lamsan til surya sam tang ko si da so da ti ni da nyum no nyum le se de te ma ji la ni bo se de ma re ta ka le kha da de se a ji lo ba nyu de de da ndo ba cha he so se she da pe do ji no tu xiu de ni tang de yo ma re no da this da ti kar sa gom jo du kan ta Tede yundi tagda yungwa rwa kaji gomja di ni da kore ni dongji da xia ya rwa. Rwa. Ni di kwa we xue xie se ko tiwa xiu ye si yungwe rwa.
So at the bottom of page 204 over to page 205, what you find stated is that as we do our practice, whatever our practice is, let's say meditation, some of the other challenge we find is getting lazy or like a sleepy head, right? When these things happen, we have to do everything to sort of jerk ourselves up from the sleepy head and being lazy. And why Geshe was chuckling over this is for us usually is a good excuse, right? You feel very sleepy, like, I think I should take a nap right now, right? We really don't want to think about I have to wake up and do practice. I think it's nap time, Mike. So we have that option. But here he's telling us we have to really wake up and don't have sleepy. So how can we do that? So the example given here, which is in the engaging in the bodhisattva deeds with action, is that as you're feeling sleepy, right, you're doing practice, should a snake crawl into your lap, you realize that you will freak out, right? You will wake up. You're not going to sleep. So this is how it is. You have to think about the consequences of negative karmic actions and think about that you need to stay alert and do a practice. And sleep is really one of those interesting phenomena, if you will, that can easily be misunderstood as you are having a good meditation there, you know. And so as Geshe was checking over this, recall that, how some people claim they're very faithful and they're really faithful to the Dharma and they love to attend the teaching, but they never listen. They just sleep there. It's just a nice doze off at the teaching. But they claim, oh, wonderful. Nothing goes in. That's how the sleep can be very, in some way, distracting in a sense, Yeah.
Oh, this is Tayan Choji was the main yes, never shown tell you Mugaji or did it. You move the car top the magic in calling Yever of ten, Tati, Tandashi, Yawama Terra call, Tandation didn't pay so doing Javaris and Hazan call you never shown Tani. And the young man walk on the call Tani and Sabsa, she would say, she maybe nears young the Samba, that be Duja, she would hit the Mavasana. Hazan Duja Simare. So touching Yavan de San Shomuji, Sunday, simply shampoo Jenny. Jenny, Pemba Nika, Simju, the Pemba Nika Tang, or Jenny, any Yevashon, Rere, Darling, Jenny, Jan Dar, Juan, the Jung Cursa. This is do they? Yevajon, Rere, Darling, mean Jenny Jang, Dala. Chi di Minjua, Tedar Shani, Tedar Shahi, Yurin Sam, or the Joju Siri, or Sheda, Nimukasa the mother, that Yimu de Katrina, any big social big Johnson, social doing Jayag, some Mambo, and in Tanto di Joe Jacob, be Captain Majana, and Taranashi Jagris, and that's also be Shira, be Jobodes, and be simply Shabas and Tanasun, the Yimu on Jugumens. So
we're on top of page 205, where it is stated, as Geshe explained, that we should not just be, so to speak, complacent that we have been able to stop a delusion arising at that moment. As a matter of fact, we really have to think more deeply about what called the negativities of the delusion, that particular delusion, and how it could produce a much more negative outcomes. We have to think that repeatedly so that we develop conviction, right, in the infallibility of this particular delusion and its outcomes, And then that would make a real difference. We could be successful in stopping it right away one time or discontinue it, but just do not be complacent with that success. And so basically, as Geshe explained, that we really have to think more deeply and say, well, I know I've been, you have not only created problem for me this very moment, actually you have created problem my whole life, for many lifetimes before, And many things going in my life wrong is basically you. You are the source of the, all the problems. And so now I won't let you to continue to do this to me all the time. I'm going to do everything to stop you here and do everything to counteract you so that you will never do this thing again over to me. Right? This is how we have to think more deeply and develop a boost of our spirit, confidence level, simshu, right? So there are two things we are doing. Number one, we set forth our strong motivation. Pempatang means like, I won't let any delusions creep up in my mind, but should it arises, I'm going to tackle it right then and there, right? That's motivation. The number two, should it arises, then we have to be very mindful and boost up our spirit to counteract it.
Shate tambe shi the tambe draw the roba the you mondo so ye so ye le temper show was or that is to get the one the country younger Tavi country show say not this was a roa. Junja you saw the bear shed this country is in tambe shi the city lamando was better share the tambe shi gave in Sierra. Tambe draws and any swig trouble. The better woman was it. In the Tigan, any big toss somebody over Sierra, any source of wrong pig, any shunu the Tebasia, Tebamondisia, or Tendesin, Tiga to dominate anything they should give to race, Darama, so you did give a lot, and the junior of the Tedeschi go with this, things are all.
So in the middle of page 205, we find it stated that, how can we cultivate mindfulness in this particular case is we have to really maybe create the favorable causes and conditions. And that would include, for example, relying upon our qualified spiritual gurus, right? Because they inspire us and their instruction. We also, learn to be in the circle of our Dharma friends, not what we call the negative friends, for lack of a better word, English, we call it digbe trouble, right? I don't want to call it evil friends, but it may very well be that. Do not hang out with the wrong, friends, but be in the circle of Dharma friends. So that could be supportive, help us to be mindful. And then, of course, engage in a study of the Dharma. Right? These are the favorable conditions through which we are able to cultivate the required mindfulness in our practice and action.
So the tone do not change same year, Labi Banglan League better chebe in the Turba Chinese. Here I did now la and the Julum Tamji the Temba Yunja, so Dembala, Zundu Zungobi, say it was a Majuba Kesha. That on the Zundu said the young Puzuri on the China said did not be lega fiction which you call Zundu your Sasha, did Zundu de Maral, did I Zundu when it translated. That Namji Kalija, Durishi says, Mare. Oh, Chisita, Chita, Kalija, the Tamashu Shigo. That said, the new Gunyan or Lunju Kaze, get a Kazina. Kaji that said, so the Kivo you enjoy you make Haiki. Nisora. That he said, the old soon, the Dakan Jashman, and it in a Peshama was here, your Marva. She said that Jawashima Pinch on to some Vienna. Any said the Shima Yingal because any tigger going to your way and the Sanji you do as what you see. Any be remember what we are your work. She said, Zundu that the any because a manor sugar is chokes and Zundu north on sugar. She said the manor sugar is
So in the summary portion, that's towards the end of page 205, what is stated there is that we should cultivate perfection of joyous perseverance Sundu properly, so to speak, with the help of mindfulness. As Geshe explained, that sometimes in the Tibetan language, kind of ordinary mundane affairs of life, people might say, oh, this person is very Sundu Chimbo, great diligent one. But technically speaking, the Chundu, joyous perseverance, is defined in terms of doing something virtuous, right, wholesome, not because you're working hard. The other Tibetan word for that kind of a mundane diligence, we call it tugru, means you are a really hard-working person. Not really, the word Chundu doesn't apply there. Anyway, the main point here is we must learn to direct our Chundu, a joyous perseverance, into the right, so to speak, practice or the right path, so that, let us say, even if somebody is very hardworking, successful in this lifetime, let's say, all of let's say you want, better housing, better whatever, all the things, name, fame, beauty, all of the above. even if you are successful, it just only is limited to this lifetime. And many times there is no guarantee, as we talked about, right? You can work hard and you will not achieve what you want, and you just end up working hard. But one thing that is guaranteed and sure in the practice is if we make every effort and be joyful in our practice, it will produce a positive outcome. There is no doubt about it, So therefore, we must learn about that kind of a distinction and direct our sundu, joyous perseverance into the right path and practice. So we will stop there today towards the bottom page 205, and we welcome your questions.
About the practice of mindfulness, I'm looking here at the quote from Nagarjuna, and he's not really talking about cultivating mindfulness in general, but mindfulness of the body.
Yes.
So what is this all about? Does that mean that there are two types of mindfulnesses?
Sure.
And Gyeltsen Kappa is mostly speaking about mindfulness of the law of karmic cause and effect, and then there is another type of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of the meditative object.
Sure. Okay. Koran condition di diri again. That again, karishu gombo ludu ki, and tanda shading now the wagon. As soon as gi that tanda tempa nyesha di lu tempa nyesha the wagon. Says this sundu kan ya that tempa nyesha the la ya namda manda kashe yor best wagon. They pena jerumbo chek that tanda de shuk jun say di nganzo le junde gi namsha me tempa nyesha ru wagon. Tempa tempo rest wagon. Wagon. Hine ta gombo ludu ki tanda sun da di ina lu tempa nyesha ru wagon. Says that tempa nyesha pena so gi komje mi yu le tempe tempa nyesha wagon. Tempa so that tempa nyesha sen wagon. Says that dichik de se kyona so the gombo ludu gi ani lu tempa nyesha sun de di kache.
Tanda di gombo ludu ki de sun de tempa nyesha ge ja di jigo de mare. Kaji ka da lega kharchina tempa tempo gu res. Tempa tempo men lega yong yo mare sha de wa. Ta nganzu namji tempa nyesha sha de ta dingsan ka de shi. Ya lu tempa lu zo sim sha ji. Tempa ye mi ba shi sha de gong zang ji shong de sha de yo wa. Ti na ya de mi ba wo ti ta ti ka je ti khar stand the lu tempa so tempa ya wa ti shi de ti no da khasa lu to the yi den ro shak ba bo ya thon da la in lu sun shak ba bo ya thon da la wa ti gum go ro wa ti mi ba shi da do sha go ro wa tan da tempa te go sa de ko yamlin khar shi na tempa te go da ga tong yi gum ge na da shong ji gum ge na da khare na wa ti tan da tempa nya bi shu gun jo bar ro sa ti wa ti tempa ti ganga be yamlin yu ze ja ya re shi ro wa 다 건데 이 처음에 예서야 되다 소화점에 처음에 예시서 돼 미국 시라질 해야 봐.
단데 디 차비 디겐 직 채널 단데 곰블루루 그 슝 다가 나르게 류 처음에 예셔 인지나 딜레스도 겐 디. 곰블루루 그 단데 게 슝저로 봐. 디나 인지나 교셔들이야 류 처음에 예셔 스티겐 디 이메이나면 거기다 딜레게 랍데 거로게.
아니 근데 류 처음에 예셔데 레모 디나 계셔면도 뭐도 류 처음에 예셔.
I was asking Geshe. Yeah.
The quote is about mindfulness of the body.
Right. That's what I was saying. Could you check with the text, so that either it is there and this is the right translation, or maybe this is translated differently. And so I want, because I don't have the Tibetan text, so I don't know what's going on. Tanda again the chamba the share up the sunset count at work again.
Don't you need to don't say go to Polu just say you that you go say good you could the cook. Gobble is their own you. Luto chamber de he Dubaji Dubaji will learn in Yawati. Tidney, Dimney, number Dugite, Chamber Jabi Shugun Jibbergis. He saws a kind of chamber tembe Yula. yang sheraji likpar shay dati kaji ti jidang cheba tenzuirwa tenji sayadi korang rangdo shigo maris sherab yukar ten pa inti ka cheba de shago ro tin zin toba shigo ro sayadwa
Losken. Tanda di ma gumbu lu rang shung tanda gen di lu chama ni se do gen. Tanda onju ke ne ji gen di yang ju.
dina lu cheba ji pejiri yiji mare de onju lu to sayadwa
Lu ka sa gen.
onju lu to cheba de shi ji di pejiri tere onju sayadi ni dewa kenda ji onju sayadi nganzo onju da ini kwarsa
De de sken.
그게 dendu Phuntsok ba ji Geshe mendo
No de de sken. De order ke lu chama ni se ke ke men do ge. Lu
Lu
chama
chama men do.
lu tembe chama ro men do ge.
mendo ludo so lu stop wes la ro
Lu sto we.
ludo so wes o mare chemba deshi case deba ji be la di
Excuse me, I have to look at this statement.
de lu chemba ya ta ludo so lu stop wes la na in lu le me ba le chana de ti go
I couldn't hear the word properly.
de anju ludo se do
Lu to so.
lu stop
Lu
wa
to chama se gen.
ludo chemba se ro lu stop wa se lu khung do se ro ta chemba ro en de gi yu sang ye ro
Ale wang ju lu to so lu chama ni sha ma be che.
呃
Lu sto ba se de.
对不对？你到不是全部的，他你那咱这话通你那蒙古这个推理的，这蒙古是老下，可是老这是西为啥的？我这把几位老是，可是全部的这把几位一老多，对的。
I think maybe it's the translation issue here. Realize the way it is presented in the Tibetan is not really mindfulness of the body. It is really mindfulness, about other things such as body and like that, So it did not mention about the mindfulness of the body. So I think it's the...
But the body is mentioned.
The body is mentioned. It's including body. Yeah, something like that. Mindfulness, that includes many things. Body is included. So it's not particularly about the mindfulness of the body, but body is included. So anyway, so going back to what Geshe said earlier, the explanation is that, yes, there are, sometimes the one we talked about here is more mindfulness in a very generic sense, right? That it should be applied to any practice you do, meditation, recitation, whatever practice, right? But then when we think about the 4 types of mindfulness, right? Mindfulness of the body, of the feeling, and things like that, but that's more like a specific kind of mindfulness we talk about. So in general, yes, there are different types of mindfulness, but the one which is emphasized and talked about here is mindfulness in general, right? That's we need to integrate in any kind of practice we do.
But isn't it the purpose of this effort?
Yes.
Now, I may be wrong about that, but I came across Bisama Alamkara, and it talks about the 4 restraints there. 4 restraints, which is the second of the 37 practices conducive to enlightenment. And it seems to me that, if I'm reading it correctly, but that really encompasses all of Tsundu, all of effort. And the purpose of these 4 restraints, basically restraining delusions from arising or abandoning delusions, all these that he talks about. The purpose of that is so that we can meditate on the body and develop. So this is the second type of mindfulness we're developing. I'm not sure if does that make sense?
All right. Well, it makes sense
to you. It does.
That's
All
what
right.
it's
I'm
meant
asking
here, right? Yeah,
about
it
you.
makes sense. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So-
I can just go back and tell him that's what you were thinking. Some of these times are right. 먼저 가르치고래 뒤로와 장조 연락수 되는 날로 와게. 다른 번에 지금 요모가 와데 시직 송고에서 와게. 디 선배 번호 디게 강 앞에는 요모가 문주 요아가 내려 세번에 소소 류리야 내도 뉘는 와게. 디 거를 시거를 좀 전선하게 디 와게.
다 들라 셰쇼고 다 던데 쳔바지다 셰로 근데 류트바냐 자기나 류메정 고드잖아 들라다 쳔바테고 메정 동 셰로 제니 메정 유드되게 상호동 인디게데 되고 하고서는 인디 메정 타진 되게 샤야로 어디서나 샤르쇼 근데 드바지베 람시든 그래 다 되게 만 저자야 마시고라래 와 되시고.
So going back to that statement Geshe made earlier where we said Tribachib Alam means mindfulness is the one path that you must travel, right? So it's a very generic statement. Of course, it could be explained in terms of what you were saying, that it could be explained in terms of the body focus, if you will. And something else I left out from previous explanation is when we look at those specific mindfulnessness, like such as the body, the purpose behind that is to cut off our attachment to the body. So then you think about the state of the body and the impermanence, all of those things. So yes, this generic mindfulness we talked about, it could be applied there too. Any other thoughts? Or behind the glass walls? Sure, go ahead.
Geshe said that small delusions will produce inappropriate mental application and so on earlier. But I remember, if I remember correctly, it's the other way around. Inappropriate mental application is what produces delusion. How does that work?
Yes. Okay. But nyomo chungjo jayen de tangbe na rwa ge ta chumi ije namdo ge jan ko gyalchen chhe la rwa ge ta namgyu ma zo sonde ka chumi ije namdo ge nyomo jingres phal go rwa ge ta da de nyomo chungjo de sha sha na ko chumi ije ya jing sa rwa ge ta de khare na so ge
ale de se go nyomo chung do mo cha wa chung chung ji je ge rwa je dan do de yan zhe wa de ya ga sam mo dang no chumi ije se wo ma le 디시는 되는 니모도 채우고 너무 벌써 다시 나올 수 가리는 되게 지금 차서는 그 약보도 사진 대바를 깨서나 인터넷 거 가도 돼 이해도보다 가사가 사모다 스미 지금 말해 지금
나래
어떻게 채우고
녀모다 스미 이제 얘기 군대 야바샤면 간에 조초 걸어 봐 스미 이제 녀모게 스미 이제
어디 파도 제대로 없지래 어디다 당번 니모 찍으러 저 니모 찍어야 돼 답이 사무스탄 되게 유코는데 다 뭐기 리그샤지 다 늦어져 버리나 리그샤 요데 되게 터버도 로다가 스미 지금 말해 들다 이모지어로
그래
근데 저 되게 연저 사무다 늦어 깨서도 연저 제와다 되게 단도배 차지 뭔가 사무단 단도 숙셔로 대서 스미 지금 그래서 이모도 페이지 파도 유래도 그래도다
군대에 니가
파도 깝깝 쉬고로
Geshe said, when we think in terms of the cause and effect relationship between Nyönmong afflicted emotions and inappropriate mental applications, they go both ways, And yes, we said, sometimes that inappropriate mental application, the Tibetan word is tsumi yije, can give rise to afflicted emotions. Or in this particular case, an afflicted emotion can give rise to inappropriate mental application. The more explanation is, let's say, when we think in terms of a beautiful object, right? There's some beauty there, let's say. So we attach to it. And then we think about how in any other way beautiful it is. So we fabricate more beauty, impute it. Then that gives rise to more intensified attachment and mental, right? So it can go both ways, yeah. Okay, we will stop there today. Yes. And we will do our Manjushri prayer and dedication. Kange lode jimye jinda nyinda namda rase chinye dungu shishin se nije toga lebam ze kanda sebe zenra mendon dunge yesebe rozo grana poje taze yala joje roda chero nyemo nyelo leje charo cheze je mare mese dunge nyo chinye chenze raji nam dene daje saju 다즈 연된 렌소 예스 주자 주다 준이 겐데 달루메세 잠베양 데 오마라 바다나 오마라 바자나 데 젠덴 제제 제라웨제 달루 데모 멤버라세 가다 덴제 숑루 도바예 로데 제도 로데 야즈 유종 베가제 계산 공외 주도 멤버 템바제라 왕도 기초베
전인 쇼군 차라서
소원데 page 21. Obeisance to my Guru and Protector Manjushri, who holds at his heart a scriptural text, symbolic of our seeing all things as they are, whose intelligence shines forth as the sun, unclouded by delusions or traces of ignorance, who teaches in 60 ways with the loving compassion of Father for his only Son, all creatures caught in the prison of samsara, confused in the darkness of their ignorance, overwhelmed by their suffering. You whose dragon thunder-like proclamation of Dharma arouses us from the stupor of our delusions, free us from the iron chains of our karma, who wields this sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever sprouts appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. You who have been pure from the beginning, who have completed the stages achieving the highest perfection of a bodhisattva, whose princely body is adorned with 112 marks of a Buddha, I bow down to you, Manjushri, Om Arabhata Nadi, O compassionate one, by the brilliance of your wisdom, illuminate the darkness engrossing my mind, enlighten my intelligence and wisdom, so that I may gain insight into Buddha's words and the texts that explain them. 31. Like the sweet perfume of white lotus, born in the ocean of knowledge, nourishing honeybees, the fortunate being, your fame pervades all directions. You are proficient and powerful in upholding the precious doctrine. To you, O Lobsang Tenzin Wangda, respectfully I pray.
Nhất tâm kính lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, bậc đại trí ngài đều phục hai chướng ngại, tựa nhất quan lan tỏa khắp mười phương, bậc thực chứng chân nghĩa màu rốt ráo, từ tim ngài Bát Nhã Kinh thủ hộ nhiệm màu, cõi luân hồi chúng sanh thọ nghiệp báo, bị ngăn che bởi phiền não vô minh, sở hữu 60 pháp âm thù thắng, cùng đại bi ngài hóa độ chúng sanh, tựa từ mẫu chăm lo cho quý tử. Tiếng rồng vang ngài thức tỉnh hữu tình, thoát khỏi vòng luân hồi nghiệp báo. Tận diệt muôn vàn khổ đau cùng ách nạn, trường tử Như Lai tối thắng toàn giác, ngài an trụ nơi thập địa pháp vân, báu thân ngài trang nghiêm thanh tịnh, 112 tướng hảo Như Lai, đây đầu đảnh lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, cúi xin ngài tận diệt ám chướng vô minh. Om Arapasanadi, con khẩn cầu dưới gót sen bậc đại trí, ban pháp lực diệt phiền não vô minh, được trí sáng con thâm nhập nghĩa màu, pháp vi diệu cùng muôn vàn luận giải. Như diệu hương ngọt ngào từ sen trắng, đàn xanh nơi trí thù thắng đại dương, hàng thiện căn như ông mật thọ nương, hồng danh ngài khắp mười phương quảng bá. Nam mô Lobsang Tenzin Wangda, xin cung kính trì niệm.
现日是王定心讲作业，下边是的摩多，天主日一当古如热那曼德拉，你样的有。